The views and opinions expressed on the cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of OldMilk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. Yo, this Young Lil album is the best of all time. I can't wait to talk to Taylor about it, man. This is gonna be the greatest thing ever.
Yo,
What's good, Taylor? How you doing?
I hate this album.
Do you have to clean your ears first?
My
What's wrong with you?
girlfriend said everything I play in the car scares her. She said I lost all my taste,
Clearly.
and I need your help.
Well, what am I supposed to do about it? You want me to order you Q-tips?
No, I need hoodies. I need a beanie. I need t-shirts. I need you to help.
All right, I'll see what I can do. I can send you this beanie, but everything else we're gonna have to see. Introducing the 2023 OldMilk Collection. This collection, comprised of hoodies, t-shirts, beanies, and stickers designed by Nate Sperlin, is guaranteed to show everyone your superior style and taste. Man, I hope Taylor doesn't scare the viewers with that bummy outfit. Oh,
Yo.
no bummy outfit today. Look at that.
No, I'm much better. The album sounded better. Everything is better. All thanks to OldMilk.
Rush over to oldmilk.co to shop the 2023 OldMilk Collection today. All right, welcome back to the Cap Podcast. This is episode 419. I am your host, Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod. It's your weekly tour through hip hop. Thank you for watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. Do us a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at OldMilk Media. Check out all the OldMilk content at oldmilk.co. This is our last show of the season, so we are basically recapping all that is hip hop in 2023. Taylor, how are you doing today?
Man, I can't complain. Had a really good Christmas yesterday, good Christmas weekend, and now just kind of, going back to work for this last week before New Year's. But hopefully it's a slow week. I know a lot of people have it off, and I don't. But I'm hoping, man. I'm hoping that enough people have it off that I don't hear from a whole lot of people.
Well, I'm definitely one of the people who have it off this week. Great Christmas. Amazing to watch lots of good basketball, also lots of good football. Lamar Jackson MVP. Let's go. So without further ado, let's just get into our recap. We're gonna go through three things here. The first thing we're going to talk about is albums that grew on us, albums that kind of died on us quicker than we expected to. Then we'll talk about just a general conversation about hip hop, where we think it's going from here. And then finally, we will wrap it up with our favorite albums of the year. So that being said, let's get to our first topic. Make sure to follow along in the conversation in the comments below. So Taylor, let's start with the albums that grew on you and you listen to more than you expected to throughout the year. Which three albums would you say have that title? And talk about your journey in loving those albums more.
Yeah, so I think that you and I, well, everyone, but you and I especially, were spoiled in 2022 because we had like heavy hitters coming out every single year or every single week. It felt like 2023 wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. Like, we had longer breaks between shows, which means there's longer breaks between albums, and things were just different this year. This felt like last year felt like people had waited until COVID was totally past to like let some of their best stuff go. And this year felt like more of a window into how things actually are going to be moving forward. That being said, three albums that grew on me this year. It's two albums and then an album series. And two of them we talked about. So the Gunna album, I really didn't expect a ton from that, just because like Gunna makes incredible music, but it's not music that I listen to, like on my own a bunch. It's definitely more stuff to like put onto the car and more stuff like, but the Gunna album this year, especially him just doing it totally solo, a gift and a curse, that grew on me a ton. K-Tramine, which if you had told me at the beginning of the year, like Amine and Kaytranada are coming out together, I would have been like, all right, like it would have been exciting, but for it to come out, right in the beginning of summer, right in the summertime, and the album to match the vibe of the summer so well, that one grew on me immediately. Like I guess it didn't grow on me a ton because it shocked me. It surprised me and it stuck with me. And then the third one is me kind of more on like my nerdy shit, I guess. But Thelonious Martin has been doing a mixtape every single month for the whole year of just beats that he's been putting together, and I play those probably more than most things at this point, just beats, like just listening to beats. So I know that doesn't necessarily fit into, stuff that we talk about all the time, but yeah, so it's so serious. The Gunna album, K Tremine, and then the whole season 1 mixtape series from Thelonious Martin.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I agree with you with the Gun album, Gift and the Curse. I've been saying it for a large chunk of the season. It's the Young Gunna Wanna, and I'm still a big P and a star like Dallas. Like, I mean, like that's one of the albums that I've had the most fun listening to this year. Definitely grew on like I think that I know that during the time that we first started talking about it, I was kind of like it's not really sustainable just having Gunna by himself, and I guess that still remains to be seen in future years of Gunna, which seemingly the politics around Gunna seem to change every week. So I guess we just have to wait and see there. But really, really good album. One of the few albums that stuck with me from the time that I listened to it, and even now, like I could go back and listen to some Gunna and listen to A Gift and a Curse, listen to Rodeo Drive, listen to Fuck You Mean, listen to what's the other one? Um Back to the Moon, and it still love those songs and sing them word for word. So that's really an album that really surprised me that it stayed stuck around so long. The second one I'll say is Business is Business by Young Thug. Like the first version of it, like it's just garbage in terms of just like sequencing and track listing. We talked about it before. But when we get the Metro's version and then we really get to see each song shine in a better element, in a better circumstance, a lot of those songs draw on me. Oh You Went, the one with 21 Savage, Hoodie, like that my buddy, like I was saying that all summer long. I love that so much. So really, really a good album. It's a shame that we didn't really get more of a or we weren't able to get more of a developed concept from Young Thug, because I think Young Thug really being able to put his hands on an album that really is just every single era of his career so far, I think that would have been huge. And finally, I have not put this album since I started listening to it, and since we talked about it maybe a month ago at this point. Heaven knows, Pink Panthers, man. Like before when we were talking about it, I knew it was good. Like obviously I raved about it. We raved about it. But then now listening to it and now breaking it, taking it apart and seeing all the different layers and stuff like that, and being able to be more insightful in how I listen to it and why I like it so much. I think that really helps it stay around and stick around. And honestly, it might be something that continues to survive into 2024. Excuse me. I'm so excited for 2024. Anyway, that being said, let's talk about the albums that we expected that we would continue listening to them, but like we just didn't for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me, and maybe I didn't. The thing about a lot of these is I didn't necessarily expect to keep listening to them, but because of the names that were behind them, you expect them to have a little more traction, and maybe they have traction in places that I'm not at.
Mhm.
Like traction in places like what I'm talking about is TikTok. So like, Utopia by Travis Scott is a big one, right? Like that's a huge album by a huge artist, and it didn't stick really with me at all. And I didn't even really dislike it that much. Um that was the biggest one that stuck out to me. Like I have it here, Rocket Power by Quavo, Set It Off by Offset, the Moneybagg Yo album, the Lil Durk album. Those ones they have songs on them that are very interesting and that make me want to go back. But when I like open up my phone every day to go play whatever I'm gonna play and I'm scrolling, I don't choose those albums. So whether that's a me problem or an album problem, a lot of like the biggest name artists that released this year really didn't do a ton for me.
Mhm.
Like I'm sure you and I will talk about, the biggest artists in this lane in a different light. And part of that is me being, just a huge fan for so long. And obviously we're talking about Drake. So, but like those other names that you would expect to do something that have things latch on, it just didn't for me this year for whatever reason. I think you and I will get into it in our next conversation. But like it's like those names, like your Takeoffs and your Quavos and your Moneybagg Yo and Lil Durk and even Travis Scott to an extent, like those rappers that we've grown to expect, maybe not greatness rap wise from, but like a level of like promotion and a level of like, there's like a level of I don't know how to describe it. There's a level of like sticking aroundness, I guess, a
Mhm.
longevity that you would expect that for me, I just didn't feel with any of those projects this year. So it's not even to say anything negative about the music necessarily, but I feel like for names like that, their project kind of came and went in a way that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I agree. Specifically with Offset. Like Offset I have written here, set it off. Like I think a part of it is that Drake, and we'll get to it when we start talking about like our favorite albums of the year. Um the Drake album, I enjoyed that album so much that every single time, like you said, like when you open your phone and you scroll down to the most recent songs that you put in your playlist, at least in my case, I see Drake and I scroll all the way down to the bottom. I see Offset first, and then I scroll up, and then I see Drake, and then I'm like, oh, I want to listen to Drake. So for that reason, Set It Off didn't really last for me as much as I expected it to. Another one like that I feel like is 222 by Lil TJ. I felt like I would have more that album would have more of a lifespan for me. And it really, really did it. And then finally A Love Letter to You 5 by Trippie Redd, another album that I enjoyed. And I'm sure if I go back and listen to A Love Letter to You 5, all these albums really, I'll still enjoy it and I'll still remember the reasons why I raved about them so much on whatever episode that we did each individual album on. But just in the moment, these are three albums that I enjoyed them in the moment. Can I say I've listened to them within the past month or in the past 2 months? Not really. So for whatever that reason is, um, I guess I'll just have to figure it out at some point. But those are really the three albums. Moving on, let's talk about 2023 hip hop. Let's talk about. I think it's fair to say that there was a sense of staleness within the genre this year, and basically, let's talk about some of the reasons why. Before I hand it off to you, Taylor. In our previous segment, you were talking about Moneybagg Yo's album or Moneybagg Yo's mixtape. And I feel like one of the reasons why that album, particularly, I wasn't really expecting much out of that album was because of the fact that it kind of seemed like Moneybagg Yo was going to drop another album this year, and he didn't ultimately. So I think a part of the reason why some of the staleness happened is that there were some artists that we were expecting music from. For example, 21 Savage, for example, Flo Milli, Moneybagg Yo, and we just never got it for whatever reason.
Yeah. I it leads that like I'm glad you brought that up because there used to be, and it wasn't just in hip hop, it was in every genre where there used to be like kind of a rigid structure for how you could drop, right? Especially albums. It was like you had to have this release date ready because you had to press physical CDs. You know what I mean? Like there were certain factors involved that were like, no, this is how you're going to do it, and there was time to build excitement, right? Within your fan base, and then that excitement percolates from inside the fan base to outside the fan base, and that's how you get, people who might be on the fence or people who might be on the other side of the fence for an artist kind of like checking out the buzz for something. And now, I mean, we get album announcements 4 days before albums now, right? 3 days before albums without any rumblings. Like, and you can't call like a snippet on an Instagram live like a rumbling or a rumor or anything like that because like without any context, unless you're so deep into it that like you've heard this snippet multiple times and you're like, yep, that's that song. Like you're not going to the buzz isn't there, right? And so when the buzz isn't there, you have people like you and I who are paying attention and we want to talk about it, but then you're not getting the massive draw to your music, right? And so I feel like there was a lot of conversation this year about is hip hop dying? And I know that you and I had put that on you put that on our outline to talk about. And in a way, it's tough for me to judge. And like, this is just honest because it is like hip hop and the culture around it isn't mine, right? It's
Mhm.
not mine to decide if it's dead or not because, it's just not. But I don't see it as a problem with one genre. I see it as a problem with music in general, with entertainment in general, where the bar right now for what's good or what's important is it feels so low. And so you have people who are you have musicians and artists across all genres who I wouldn't say they're stooping to a level below them, but they're doing what they have to keep, making money and keep the machine going. And yeah, it's easy to say, well, just do whatever you want, and it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, say fuck your label and do whatever you want, but it's way easier to say that than it is to do that, especially for people who have no idea what that's like. Like, yeah, it looks great, but of course it looks great. It's like social media marketing. They want you to think everything looks great. So I think there was staleness this year, and I think there's a lot of attempts to capture things that don't necessarily feel genuine, and that's really easy to tell, especially in this genre, which is probably the most like vulnerable genre of music, because
Mhm.
it is like so clear storytelling, and it's like the most stripped back, and there isn't a ton of room for like these like big like vague things. It's like, no, people want to hear you say exactly what you're trying to say. And the best people, the best rappers, your Kendricks, your Jay-Z's, they can say these things that feel vague but aren't at all. They're also the most direct thing you've ever like heard. So, and I'd be interested to see how you feel about it, but I don't see any of what happened this year as a genre specific problem. I see it as an entertainment problem in general, and it's just what happens when social media pushes everything. And the cycle for things is a week as opposed to 6 months or a year. Like, when you and I were young, obviously MP3s were available, but you and I are old enough to remember when it's like, all right, are you going to spend your $20, either a physical album or an iTunes album, right? Are you going to spend your $20 on this album because that's the only album you're going to have, or like that's what you're going to come back to because you spent your money on that? And now it's so different. Like, you can just have whatever you want. And so I don't know. I mean, the biggest pop star in the United States is eating off of just redoing all her old albums.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and that's like making waves. It's like those are going number one, and it's like, all the props to, whoever, like, go do your thing. Like, yeah, if that's how you need to win your battle for your rights or whatever, sure. But I think it's all combining together in a way that makes it so the top of hip hop, the most mainstream stuff, it's like it a lot of it just falls on deaf ears because it doesn't mean anything. It's all trying to please an algorithm when, yeah, like, we're all programmed in a way by social media, but we're still people. Like, we're not the algorithm, at least not yet.
Yeah. I like that you broaden it out to all of entertainment, because really when you look at it from an all entertainment, all encompassing lens, you're right. I mean, nobody really cares about Marvel anymore. Nobody, like, the only movie that I really wanted to go out and see from the moment it was announced was Across the Spider-Verse. That's the only movie. Really, the only video game that I really, really wanted from the moment it was announced is Spider-Man 2. Really, the only album that I really, really wanted from when it was announced. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah.
So I like that you brought in that, like, you broaden it out. I think that overall, just in terms of not just musical artists, but all in terms of just all artists in general, I think that artists are at a point where they are starting to have to fight for their lives. Like, we see all the strikes going on in Hollywood and stuff like that. You talk about Taylor Swift and what she has to do to get her rights and get what the money that is rightfully hers and stuff like that. Also understanding, like, music is so interesting because music is usually the genre, or the least valued genre, but it's the most important genre because, like, everything else has, like, TV, like, if you want to have a love scene or whatever's going on, you're not going to be able to execute that scene correctly without the proper music. Movies, same way. Like the NFL, all that lore that goes into that, all that lore that goes into the NBA, music is behind that too. So when we think about that and we think about how exploited musical artists are, probably the most exploited artists out of all the artists in general, um because of the contracts, because of 360s, because of stuff like that. And now it's starting to get to a place where you have to make a certain sound, you have to fit in, and if you don't fit in, we're not even going to try to find a spot for you. You can just leave or do whatever you got to do. So seeing that, I feel like it's really good that, once again, that it's really good that you brought it into an all-encompassing thing. I feel like specifically for hip hop, I feel like one of the reasons why it's gotten stale is because again, like there's just a lack of diversity in sound. Like it seems like everybody's talking about the same thing. Like before, maybe like 10 years ago, if you wanted, like you had 21 Savage, you had Denzel Curry, you had Lil Uzi Vert. These are three artists who are really, really good at what they do, but the things that they do don't really overlap. And I feel like today we don't really have that. I can't really think of a conscious hip hop album that we talked about or that I really wanted to listen to all year. I can think about every single mainstream album, obviously, because that's mainly what we talk about. But in terms of like the things on the side where it's like, yo, I love this, but I don't know if we're going to talk about it or whatever like that. It ain't really anything that special. Like the only like there's nothing really that special where it's like, okay, this is next or this is whatever. And that leads me to my next point. Where are the young artists? It seems like everybody that's successful in music and continuously being successful in music has already been established themselves. Drake, Lil Uzi, Travis Scott, Nicki Minaj, um, who else? Lil Durk, like Gunna, like these are all artists with established fan bases already. Even when you get to like the Playboy Cardis, the Yeats, like Yeat has an established fan base. NBA YoungBoy has an established fan base, but there hasn't really been an artist besides maybe Pink Panthers. Ice Spice too, but Ice Spice hasn't really like she dropped an EP, but there hasn't really been a debut album yet.
Yeah.
There hasn't really been an artist that's really been new and is like, okay, that's where music is going. That's where hip hop is going. So in thinking about it from previous years, like last year we had Glorilla, we had Ice Spice. 2 years ago we had Baby Keem. There just isn't anyone with that type of buzz on that level where we can point to and be like, that's the future of hip hop. And I feel like for that reason, that also takes away from the diversity and stuff like that because there isn't anyone who's new who's just like, okay, I respect all the old heads and stuff like that, but fuck all that. We're gonna do this over here.
Right.
And everybody else is gonna rock with this over here.
Yeah. I mean, so like the biggest example of that to me, I remember being like in high school when Kendrick was first like really showing up on the scene. And it was like that. It was like, hey, everyone else, I don't know what to tell you, but like it's over. You know what I mean? It's like Kendrick is here and it could be a result. And I think the aging process, especially with stuff like this, is probably faster now with social media than it was because like you and I grew up on social media, right? Like from the time we were in middle school, it's like, yeah, it's here. You're just on it all the time. And so I wonder if it goes faster because I can't tell if it's just like because I'm too old for certain things, but every new artist that I see coming up is like trying to be Playboy Cardi.
Mhm.
Like that's all I see. Like I don't even know half these. Like I know their names, right? But like all I see here is like the like Playboy Cardi, Opium, Rick Owens, like this whole like lane that I don't quite understand. And it's probably not for me to understand, but that's where I feel like all the new artists are. And you don't you're right. Like there isn't that next class. And I think last year you and I talked about it like who's going to be the next big three, right? Cuz you have Kendrick, Cole, and Drake, and it's like who's next? And I think, and I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I know like in other conversations you have like Lil Baby is always in there, but obviously like we've seen how the tides have turned on him in just a year. It went from being
Mhm.
like, oh, is this the greatest rapper alive right now to his last album, it all sounds the same. Like he disappeared. Everything he puts out, it's terrible. So it changed so quickly. Like in terms of just entertainment and kind of like taking the Drake spot, people were talking about Jack Harlow being that guy. But it's like, and yeah, he just had a number one. But you and I talked about it, off mic. That number one, I've heard it enough now because it's been out long enough now, and it's unavoidable, on the internet. But I didn't even know that song was out when it went number one. And
Yeah.
you and I have reviewed his music. It's not like it's just like this, like oh, like whatever. It's this kid who had, it's like not like he's had music that you and I have talked about that has gone big in the world of like hip hop. Not like oh, he's on the verge of like whatever. It's been like no, like people have talked about him in rap categories. But this year, you're right. It feels like all that went to the wayside in a way, and I think we'll get into it because I mean, my three favorite albums this year are three albums that I talked about in my power rankings, but
Mhm.
three albums that we didn't review, and it's three
Mhm.
albums I've talked to you about at length. So it's like it'll make sense. But the whole is hip hop dead question, and it's just such an irritating question, right? Because it's like No, I feel like the answer will always be no, unless like something drastic happened and people legitimately weren't making the music anymore. But you, the younger artists, they're not so young, right? Like they're the underground artists. And it's like there is a pocket of there's a pocket of rap right now that is like doing incredible things. And it's going to be very well represented in my, when we get to the end of this episode. But there's this pocket where it's like very like old school hip hop. And it's still there. You just have to look for it, and you have to just like decide for yourself. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go listen to this stuff and make this a part of what I listen to. And it's tough because for so long we expected the best artists to give us the best music, and for so long that was the case. Like I think a lot about, like 2010 to 2015, 2016, when you and I would have been in high school. Like we had the best artists putting out their best music, and it was like, okay, it's like the mainstream went from being sort of a joke in a way to being like, no, like Kendrick Cole, Drake, Schoolboy Q, all of them, like they were putting out the best music. Now I'm looking to people on the fringes to make the best music, and then I'm looking at the top to make the biggest waves, I guess. And that those don't always coincide, because you just do it's with the way algorithms work and streaming works. We're so used to being spoon-fed everything, right? And you get to a point where you almost trick yourself, where you're like, whatever the algorithm feeds me, I guess that's all there is. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so hip hop it's not dead. Like it'll never be dead. You just have to go like look for it. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of like the magic of it sometimes, is that you don't like there's no underground pop stars. You know what I mean? Like a pop star is a pop star. You can be
Mhm.
an underground rap star. You can hold a corner of the market for yourself. And I'm talking guys like Larry June, Boldy James, like Wiki from New York, and even guys who are bigger, but it's like Earl Sweatshirt. You know what I mean? Vince Staples, like they're still big names, right? Obviously, I'm not gonna say those are small name rappers, because they're not, but they've pulled away in a way where they're like, no, I'm just gonna make my music and put it out, and that it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like Vince has more exposure than Earl, obviously, but Earl went from being in Odd Future and being like, oh, he's like next. You know what I mean? It was like Tyler the Creator, Frank Ocean, and Earl Sweatshirt. Like those were the three faces of that movement, and now he's just off in the corner doing his own thing, and you develop a real fan base. So all of those are examples like why to me hip hop isn't dead, but I think stale is the perfect word to describe it. And a lot of that staleness comes from the fact that like the new artists who are trying to make it the biggest and who aren't just trying to stay in their lane, they're all copying what they've seen work before them. And it feels like there's very little new material. And that's why, like, this isn't necessarily hip hop, but that's why, like, a Pink Pantheress is so refreshing, because
Mhm.
it's like, all right, this is a newcomer who's making their own style of music with their own sound, and are like happy with that. And it's okay. Like, there wasn't any like, like the biggest attempt to cross over is a remix with Ice Spice, but that's not like Pink Panther's trying to make like a drill song or trying to get on like a Metro Boomin beat. It's like, no,
No.
it's bringing Ice Spice into her world and being like, all right, we're here now. And so that's promising. And I think that, yeah, it feels like every new rapper that I see who's making any waves, especially on the internet, is trying to be Playboy Cardi. And it's like, well, there's only one Playboy Cardi.
Yeah.
So someone else has to take like, because you're not going to replace it. Like I know that like Ken Carson, I see a bunch of stuff about him, or Destroy Lonely, and I'm not well versed enough to know their music or comment on their music, but it's like it just feels like it's like the every new movement is trying to like capture something that Playboy Cardi did, and you're not getting the variety like we came up with. I mean, when you and I were young, Drake was like the soft guy.
Yeah.
He was like the soft rapper. It wasn't like he didn't have the bag he has now where he can go
Drake
do.
before a beard was very different.
Yeah,
Was a
no,
very
for
different
real.
guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I one thing I do want to say, first of all, Pink Panthers on a drill beat. I don't. She's a great artist. I have faith that she'll make it work. But I'm just laughing because it's just like, why would she like? just the thought in my head. Anyway, regardless of that, I feel like on top of everybody trying to be Playboy Cardi, I also feel like the aging for certain rappers. Like for example, like a Lil Uzi, I feel like that right there is also an example of why it seems to be getting stale because part of the reason why we had diverse sounds is because artists knew had their identity and stuff like that. So now when you have artists who are older and are aging and now completely, well, I don't want to say completely, but like seem to kind of have abandoned the identity that they have built that following over for so long to chase the younger sound, it kind of feels weird or it just doesn't inspire the same amount of enthusiasm to listen to an album. And then on the other side, when you have an artist like Meek Mill who doesn't really update the sound at all, that also makes it become stale. I feel like another reason why, at least for me personally, why I feel like it's growing stale is because I feel like there's a lot of or there's a lack of relatability in the lyrics now too. Like a lack of content, a lack of uh humanity for a lack of a better term in the content of the lyrics that we've been listening to this whole year. I feel like there have been many times where we have said this year that wow, this is great. I kind of wanted you to go deeper with that emotion, or I kind of wanted you to expound upon that. I kind of wanted you to, there's so much stuff that's happened in your life. Like, I kind of want you to like kind of like talk about that a little bit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think just like from the root of understanding that art is something that is basically good. Like if it's good, it makes you feel something, whether it's hatred because you hate it or because it's like love because you actually love it. At the end of the day, that art did its job because it made you feel something. And the lack of accountability, especially with a genre that is built on accountability in the first place, like the foundations of it is really not accountability, excuse me, relatability is probably the better word to say. Built on relatability. The lack of that relatability also kind of draws a wedge in between the artist and the fans, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, the classic criticism of rap music was that, and it's like a super old and super, just tired thing, but it was like, oh, all they rap about is guns and money and women and whatever. Now it's like even more specific than that. Like we got everyone from your youngest rappers to 40 something year old Rick Ross. It's like, are you buying designer bags and are you paying for cosmetic surgery? And that's like a lot of songs. It's like, oh, did I buy like someone a Bottega bag? Did I buy him a body? Like, and everyone is looped into that, right? Like Drake's in there, like Meek Mill's in there, like 21 Savage is there, Lil Uzi's there, and it's like, yes, I understand that, but we've gotten so pigeonholed was how like what the content material needs to be. And you're right. And I don't think you're calling for, everyone to go make food and liquor, right? You're
No,
not calling for that. Like,
I would like
but
more food and liquors though.
no, I know, but there used to be, we used to have, and we still do, and I don't want to say it like, oh, it doesn't exist anymore. But there used to be like, oh, if you're feeling like Lupe one day, you go listen to Lupe, and if you're
Mhm.
feeling like ignorant the next day, you go listen to, whatever, like you
Two
play
chains.
Future or whatever. Right, exactly. There isn't. It's like everyone's trying to do everything now, and I think that's it has caused a lack of relatability. Because it's just there's nothing like, I mean, I don't know about you, but I certainly can't relate to like, going and blowing, tens of thousands of dollars on Rodeo Drive. Like I can't.
I definitely cannot.
And
In
and
case
like,
you haven't, if you haven't looked at the climate of the country lately, we're all
yeah.
poor. Like we
And there's a
can't
lot
relate
of
to that.
there's so much great music that I love so much that I can't relate to, but it's like it's real life. It's that person's, if their real life is doing that, and it's like, and it's given to you in a way that's like, okay, I can, I got that. Like, like Jay-Z wasn't talking about, doing what I do. Like he's not talking about going to the farmer's market on Sunday morning,
Mhm.
but he's talking about his real life in a way that's like authentically him. So I think you're right. I think that relatability is on the decline, and my number one album of the year, the reason that it's my number one album of the year is because it's relatable, because it's vulnerable. So if you want to get into our best albums of the year, let's do it.
Yeah. First start off with a couple honorable mentions. This is music that Well, one of them is definitely something that is critically acclaimed, but it's just not hip hop. But SOS by SZA, been listening to that all year. I have to give it some love for the last time. And then my second honorable mention is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the soundtrack by Metro Boomin. In case you haven't noticed, I've been really, really into Spider-Man all year, and it's probably gonna continue. So yeah, those are my two honorable mentions. Taylor, do you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I have three of them. So I have Pop on PEDs by Popo 2004 and Subject 5. I have Faith is a Rock by Wiki Mike, and that's produced by The Alchemist. And then a surprising honorable mention. It's For All the Dogs by, Shopping Bag Drizzy Drake, my guy. That's an honorable mention. And the only reason it's even considered for an honorable mention is because of the Scary Hours edition. Like that saved it at the last second for me. And if that was its own standalone EP, it'd probably be in my top three, but it's not. So it's an honorable mention for now.
All right. What are your third favorite and second favorite albums of the year?
Perfect. So my third favorite album of the year is Voir Dire by Earl Sweatshirt and Alchemist. It's a very simple album, but it is those two at their best. It's Alchemist flipping samples, taking 1 and 2 bar loops, looping it up, and Earl Sweatshirt doing what he does best and just rapping. And it's so simplistic and it's so much of his real life. And I've had that spinning since it came out a few months ago. So that's my number three. Uh, you want two now, or do you want to go back and forth?
Oh, you could do number two
All
now.
right. My number two, which might be surprising that it's not number one, is another Alchemist album, and it's Larry June and the Alchemist, The Great Escape. That came out, I think, in April, and being in the Bay Area definitely helped, especially with Larry June being from here. But that album is so cohesive; it's perfect. It like sets the scene for what feels like should be like a San Francisco, Oakland, Bay Area, like kind of like a old school like gangster movie, and it's just a perfect album. It was perfect to listen to all summer, and it's two of my favorites. Again, similar to Voir Dire, just doing what they do best.
Yeah. Number three for me, I have to have A Gift and a Curse by Gunna. I mean, again, it remains to be seen if he'll be able to recreate something like this, but for the moment, just like having Fuck You Mean, having Rodeo Drive, having Back to the Moon, having Crazy, Bread and Butter, all right at the end. Like it really is one of the most complete albums of the year. Definitely something that I've kept on listening to over and over and over again. And honestly, something that I wouldn't be surprised if maybe in 2025, I'm like, what was 2023 like? And I pressed that, and I'm like, wow, 2023 was amazing. Just based off of listening to those tracks. Definitely one of my favorites. Number two, and it was close. It was really, really close for number two. Number two, I have to say Nostalgia by Rod Wave. A lot of people kind of felt like it was similar to the last one, but just the growth in the storytelling, also the different energy that Rod Wave seemed to approach this one with more of a positive attitude, more of a storytelling focus on this album. You could really see that his artistry is growing and he's continuing to grow that artistry. Really only one or two skips on the album, in my opinion, but just overall, it's a really, really good album. Probably would have been album of the year if it wasn't for what my actual album of the year is. And I do regret not seeing him at Barclays Center because I heard it was amazing. Taylor, what is your album of the year?
I'll get right to it. My album of the year is Ways of Knowing by Navy Blue. I texted Nate about this album when it came out, and I said, this is the one. And it stayed there. It deals with loss, it deals with love, it deals with life, and it's just a classic hip hop album. And it's what I've played the most this year. And I keep coming back to it, and I'll keep coming back to it. I think Navy Blue is, one of the better young rappers that no one really talks about. But that album is really special to me, and it's the only piece of music this year that came out that like actually moved me emotionally and brought me to a place where I was like, yep, this needs to be recognized for that.
Yeah. My best album of the year is For All the Dogs by Drake. Their 2023, like we just talked about, was stale. But if there was one album that I've had the most fun listening to, it is For All the Dogs. From being like, oh, when Cizo touchdown does it, to having knowing all the interludes, like you're listening to BARK radio, like knowing all of them like word for word and stuff like that. There has not been an album that has really come close in terms of fun. There are a lot of blemishes on this album. Like there are a few skips, way more skips than on Nostalgia by Rod Wave, but just the overall fun and the overall fun that I've had listening to this album, I can't put it anywhere else but number one. So congratulations, Drake. You will not be slandered by me for another year. That's 2 years in a row, so good for him. Anyway, this has been the Cat Podcast. This has been season 4 of the Cat Podcast. Thank you for watching us all season. Let us know what you think about 2023 in the comments below. Let us know your favorite albums of the year. Do us a favor, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Old Milk Media, and check out all the Old Milk content at oldmilk.co.